Let's dig deep.
Working in a coal mine, going down, down, down. Working in a coal mine, about to step down.
Louis, there's a new study out by Tyton Partners and the Walton Family Foundation. They wanted to know how this pandemic and the lockdowns and the disruptions to traditional schooling changed how parents reacted and sought to educate their children. We were talking about this off the top about how parents have to be involved, right?
Absolutely. Parental involvement is the key. I mean, that is the common denominator to kids' success in schools.
And so I guess if you look at if there's any silver lining to the dark cloud that was the government lockdowns of COVID, some parents decided to get more involved than they had been before.
Well, those that could.
Okay.
I mean, but if their job, if their particular occupation didn't allow them to be at home with the kids, then the kids were basically left on their own.
So there is the survey out, and according to the survey, let me read to you, 15% of parents changed their child's school for the 2021 academic year, which is estimated to be 50% higher than behavior pre-pandemic. So twice as many parents were changing the school-type environment that their kids were in. Either they were taking them out of public school and putting them in homeschooling or into charter schools or something else.
Okay, got it.
Twice as many. Generally, students left public schools and private schools and went to either charter schools or homeschooling programs. And there are a couple of varieties of homeschooling programs, either just you and your kid, or maybe you get some parents on the block and you all form a micro school or something like that. Okay. Homeschooling went from 1.9 million kids to 3.1 million students. That's about a 50% increase in just 1 year. That's a big deal.
But in all fairness, and I say in all fairness, we're talking about a very exclusive demographic here because
for the most part,
most parents, I mean, especially those that it's a two-income household, they can't afford to do homeschooling. And I'm not judging here. I'm just saying, and there's nothing wrong with homeschooling either.
Right.
But at the same time, I think we've got to put this in context that not everyone has that choice to homeschool.
Well, again, we increased about 1 million homeschoolers. Well, I guess 1.2 million homeschoolers this last year. But there are 45 million students in public schools, just for comparison. Okay?
And there's a lot of households that are making choices to perhaps become one-income household so that one of the parents can remain at home and homeschool the children.
And what you're talking about, the study did pick up on. Here's what they said. Higher income families also perceive at higher rates than other families a more positive impact of COVID-19 on their child's educational experience. Limited awareness of and access to alternative and emerging learning models significantly hindered parent agency, particularly for parents at lower income levels. Lower income parents also struggled with other competing priorities such as paying for housing and food insecurities.
Well, and internet connectivity.
Sure.
I mean, or computers.
Right.
Or an iPad. I mean, there are a lot of other competing, if you don't pay the electric bill, I mean, if money's tight, and I mean, how does the kid
get online and stay online?
Exactly.
Okay. So for the parents that switched, why did they switch? Well, 43% of the parents who switched said it was because their kids learned better from in-person education. And if I can't do in-person at school, then I'm going to do in-person with me and my kid or me and the neighborhood kids, okay?
I think that's the case for most of us. I mean, we learn better. I do.
Yeah, in person.
Being in person.
You have to learn how to learn online. It's a different skill set, and we haven't been teaching our kids how to do that, and it frankly is harder. It really is. There's just something about human interaction. Speaking of which, 42% of parents said they changed their kids' educational situation because of their children's mental health. They did this to improve their kids' mental health. That's about as many as said academics. They learn better in person, and they're less likely to become depressed. They're less likely to have the anxiety that they're having with the stupid system we set up this last year in most schools.
Well, and I think it's compounded by the fact that we've had an entire generation of children grow up behind a computer screen.
Sure.
Or behind a mobile phone screen.
Devices.
It's just, there's something about human interaction, like you said, that social being with other people. You can't. You can do the Zoom,
Right.
but you can't replicate it.
And a third of the parents that switched their kids' education, they said they did it because this way their kids were getting, quote, more thoughtful teaching. The idea being that teachers were so overwhelmed with how to just do Zoom, they weren't putting as much time into what they were going to teach online. They were focused on how do I teach online.
Well, just think about it. I mean, the teachers were thrust into this situation. How many of these teachers were given proper training?
None.
Was there any practice?
Nope.
I mean, for how long did
There really
they
wasn't.
prepare for this for this virtual teaching?
There really wasn't.
It's not their fault.
Yeah.
I'm just saying we jumped into something that was untested.
Well, what we did was a massive human experiment this year on an entire generation of kids. But in science, before you do an experiment, you're supposed to have a hypothesis, right? We didn't have a hypothesis. We screwed everything up because someone said we should, not because it would make the learning environment better. They didn't do this experiment because of science. They did it because of fear. And the people who got hurt the most, once again,
Were the kids
the kids at the lowest economic end of the
the
spectrum.
least among us?